Welcome back to Shit Creek Survivors. We share real stories of people getting stuck up Shit Creek, the paddles they used to get out, and hope for anyone stuck up their own Shit Creek right now. I'm Cam, and today we're joined by retired SWAT Sergeant Jim Vaglica, who was on the ground during the hunt for the Boston Marathon bomber after one of the most shocking terrorist attacks in American history. Jim spent over 32 years in law enforcement and takes us inside the Boston Marathon bomber manhunt, the Watertown shootout, tactical house sweeps, and the mental toll that comes with the badge. This is an intense conversation about resilience, sacrifice, and the higher calling behind law enforcement. Let's get into it. Jim, thank you so much for being with us today. It is such a blessing and an honor. If you would introduce yourself to our audience, let us know a little bit about who you are.
Okay, Cameron, great to virtually meet you. My name is Jim Vaglica, and I was a police officer in Waltham, Massachusetts. It's a city suburb right outside of Boston.
Okay.
So I grew up in Waltham, and I got hired by the Waltham Police Department by some miracle, and that was way back in 1985. I was barely 23 years old. I loved the job. When I first got on, I was raring to go. I was an aggressive young officer, and I think about the 5-year mark, I got grabbed for a street level drug unit. So I spent 3 years on a street level drug unit, making hundreds of arrests. I knew every bad guy in the city. I knew every player. And then after 10 years, I got promoted to sergeant. So I was a street patrol sergeant. Right at that same time, I had the opportunity, my department joined a collaborative organization of police departments. So in Massachusetts, at least the eastern half of the state is broken up into what we call law enforcement councils. And it's a collaboration of departments that there's all different aspects of it, but one is a SWAT team. So I had the opportunity to try out for the SWAT team. It's a very high entry level tryout, and there's about a 60% failure rate, even when guys are prepared. Mm-hmm. I was able to make it through on my first tryout. So nice. It's called the NEMLEC SWAT team. So it's the Northeastern Massachusetts Law Enforcement Council. So we had about 30 operators, and we covered, so when I left the team, we were covering over 50 communities. So wow. Yeah, and so Boston wasn't part of NEMLEC, but we assisted Boston on big events. So it was very common for us to go into Boston and help them out.
Okay.
Anyway, so I spent 16 years on the SWAT team, on call 24/7. I would estimate 1,000 missions. So I did 32 years on the police department, retired, then got sworn in again. Because I go back, I work police detail. So in Massachusetts, construction companies, when they're working on the roads, they hire police details to direct traffic and just to make sure the scene's safe and all that. So right now I work police details, and then I also work for 2 different private protection companies. I worked last night, I worked the night before. And so I'm married. I got 2 adult children. I've got, my daughter has 2 granddaughters, and they actually live right next door. So I see them every single day. My granddaughters, they're 4 and 1, and they make me laugh and cry every damn day. My daughter makes fun of me. Oh, Poppy's crying again. But, yeah, that's, happily married. That's unusual, right? For the same woman for over 30 years.
Yeah,
Um,
she must add a lot of dedication to you.
she put up with a lot, Karen, a
Yeah.
lot. My whole family put up with a lot. And
Mhm.
I give them a lot of credit, a lot of respect for it. So that's my intro. That's all I
Gotcha.
got.
Now, there's one part I do want you to mention, and it might help people sort of place you, is that you participated in the Boston Marathon bomber manhunt. I mean, that's remarkable. Can you speak on that at all about how you were kind of like involved in that?
Yeah. So it all went down in Watertown, Mass, right? The big shootout and the boat and everything was in Watertown. Watertown borders Waltham. That's my city. We're
Okay.
sort of we're sort of sister cities, right? And Watertown is part of Nemlec. So
Okay.
whenever they need a SWAT team, we go in. Um, I mean, I probably the best way to do it is just to start on Marathon Monday,
Hmm.
and I can just roll it from there. So Marathon Monday is a huge deal. That's a huge deal in Boston.
Yeah.
There's always a Red Sox game at Fenway, which is right there, where the marathon runs through. So everyone's always partying. It's Patriots Day. It's a legal holiday, so
Right.
people have off.
Okay.
Um, and so everyone's partying, everyone's doing something on Marathon Monday.
Hmm.
You're either in the marathon, out, um, cheering on the marathon. You're out at a bar, on the marathon route, or you're at Fenway. But anyway, it's a huge celebration, Marathon Monday in Boston.
Gotcha.
I was working as a street patrol sergeant, a 3 to 11 shift. So I knew it was going to be a busy shift. First thing after roll call, I hit one of my favorite sub shops, get something to eat quick, fast. The earlier the better,
Hmm.
because I might not get a chance. I walk into the sub shop and he's got the TV on, and it's the marathon. And I go, what's going on? And he goes, there's two explosions at the finish line and they think it's a gas leak. And I said, two explosions at the finish line is terrorism. I grabbed my food. I headed out of there. Now my phone's going off. SWAT team respond to Boston for mutual aid. Next thing I know, I'm in Boston, and like this is chaos. They have no idea who did this, what's next, how many people are involved in this,
Hmm.
and like everything that was happening in the city. If there was a fire, if there was a shooting, whatever was happening, they were saying, "Oh, is this part of the plot?" Right? So
Hmm.
it was really nuts, chaos. So they decided they're going to break my team up into two teams, and then place us strategically, and we were rapid response units,
Okay.
whatever wherever we needed to go. So we got through that evening, and then it was midnight, and they decided that our team was going to stay in Boston for the foreseeable future, and we were going to split the team in half. Half the team was going home at midnight, coming back at 6 a.m. So we've been in 12-hour shifts, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., right? And then p.m. to a.m.
Right.
So that's what we did that whole week. And they were putting us at what the FBI considered high value targets.
Hmm.
So the Big Apple Circus was in Boston. And so one night, my half of the team was assigned to that, extra security for the circus. Um, and so now it got to be Thursday, and nothing had happened, right? And where everyone's wondering, where are the bombers? You know, Are they even still in the country?
Right.
No one has any idea as far as we're being told.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, Back it up. Me and my wife have a wedding scheduled for the weekend in
Hmm.
New Jersey. And she's a makeup artist, so she's doing the makeup for the whole bridal party. And we're invited to the rehearsal dinner on Friday evening. And so we have hotel booked Friday evening, Saturday evening, right? The wedding is on Saturday morning at 11 a.m.
Okay.
So I reach out to my team leader and I tell him the situation. I'm like, nothing's happening. We have no clue if anything's going to happen. Do you care if I go to this wedding?
Right.
And he said, fine. He said, yeah, okay. Head for the wedding on Friday morning. So now it's Thursday evening. I go to bed like 11:30 and my phone's going off 1:22 a.m. I'll always remember that time for some reason. So I grab it and it says, SWAT head for Watertown, officer involved shooting. That's it. That's all we get. Right.
Right.
So this is a strange situation. I would normally just head out. Right. I'm out the door in 10 minutes.
Hmm.
But I know it's Watertown and I know that my department is going to know what's going on. So I call the station. I get the lieutenant. Lou, what's going on in Watertown? I just got called out. He says, the bombers are in Watertown. They killed a cop. There's been a car chase. There's a shootout. They're throwing bombs at the cops. He says it's the craziest thing I ever heard. So he goes, turn on the TV, man. It's on every channel. So he goes, so I said, all right, Lou, I'm heading for Watertown. He goes, you better be careful, man. So anyway, I hang up. My wife goes, what's going on? I go, the bombers are in Watertown. I got to go. And then stupidly, I told her to turn the TV on. So she finds out they killed a cop. And anyway, so I'm doing 100 miles an hour. I get to Watertown. It's about 2 a.m. and it's chaos. I go right to where the shootout was. All right. So I don't know. Did you see the movie Patriots Day? All right. So great movie, really dramatic, right? They really blew it up for movie's sake. Okay.
Okay.
But anyway, Watertown PD had this huge shootout with the bombers in this little neighborhood. And they were throwing bombs. They had small IEDs, and at one point they threw one of the pressure cookers at the cops.
Gee.
One of the officers on scene was Sergeant John McClellan, and I grabbed him. After this all went down, like months later, I ran into him and I grabbed him and I cornered him because I wanted to know. I want to know from his perspective how this all went down. And just to summarize that, he fired every round he had, almost 50 rounds. Okay, I dare you to find another cop that's fired every round that he had in
Right.
one single shootout.
Right.
He told me that he ended up fighting with the older brother. And he looked at his gun and it was in lockback and he had nothing else left for ammo. So he just started smashing this guy in the face with an empty gun.
Wow.
Warrior. Anyway, okay, so bring us back to that night when we arrived. My team arrives. We form up. We get the lowdown. The other terrorists, right? We didn't know they were brothers. We didn't know anything. Is on the he left in a vehicle and then he abandoned the vehicle, so it looks like he's on foot. And there are unexploded IEDs all in the area. So what's more dangerous than an unexploded IED, right?
Right.
Because they tried to set it off. They were lighting wicks, okay, and throwing them, and some of them were not exploding. But is that just is that ember in there, right? Just simmering, and it's going to go at any time.
Right.
Or do they have radio controlled bombs like they had at the marathon, right? So
Yeah.
can they set them off when we're nearby? Can our radios accidentally set them off?
Yeah. So you're dealing with a lot of unknowns, like,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're told that he's armed. He might have a handgun. He might have a long arm. He might have bombs. He might have a suicide vest. Right. These were all possibilities that
Yeah.
heightened our search. Okay. If he's got a long arm, right? Basically, the deal with a long arm is you just go by. If he can see you, he can kill you. All right. So 100 yards away, we're walking in,
Right.
and he's got the drop on us. Right. Our awareness and our safety was way up there.
Yeah.
And so we're searching the neighborhood, house by house, yard by yard. We're checking trash cans. We're looking everywhere where he could possibly be. And so that starts at 2 a.m. And so now the sun's coming up and we're still searching, and they realize this is too much for one team to perform, right? So they start bringing in other teams. They brought a team in from Cape Cod. So I don't know how many teams actually came in. I'm guessing half a dozen at least. And so the FBI was in charge. They set up a command post, and they made a search grid that was 20 blocks square. And then they were assigning different teams, different parts of that grid. And then, so there's a lot of misinformation out there about how we were searching people's houses. Okay. So we were knocking on the door, and hopefully somebody would answer the door. Okay. All right. Let me back this up. Watertown had put out a reverse 911 saying, this is a dangerous situation. There are people out there armed and dangerous. You need to shelter in place. Stay in your house.
Yeah.
That was all of Watertown. So hopefully if somebody would answer the door and we'd say, listen, this is a situation. Do you want us to search your house? This part of the country, everyone has a basement, right? A cellar.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everyone has outside access to that basement. Most houses would say, we know there's no one in our house, but we haven't checked the basement. Can you check the basement for us? And basements are always the place where you just dump everything you don't want. All right. So they're cluttered.
Yeah.
So that makes it even more difficult for us to search. Here's some old couch. Is he behind that couch? When I put my face over to look, am I going to take a round? So, that's where we were for this entire search. So
I've found guys hiding in couches before. It's amazing where people can hide. So I can't imagine going into a basement over and over, because I've literally found people in the couch, like in the couch.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever found anyone in a couch. That's a good one. So anyway, so now we're searching in full gear, full SWAT gear. We got about 50 pounds on us at that high level, right, of alertness. So right around noontime, someone at the command post realizes, hey, this team at this point is not combat ready. Tell them to stand down. Have them stand down where they are. We're going to send out water and food. So we got that command, and I remember we were in somebody's driveway, and everyone just dropped their heavy vest and helmet, and just laid down in the driveway. And like within a couple of minutes, everyone was unconscious.
Wow. Just exhausted.
Yeah. And so at some point, my eyes opened and I looked around and I grabbed my phone. And so that whole time I was in Watertown, I took 2 pictures. And they were pictures of my team laid out unconscious on their gear in somebody's driveway. It's like a scene out of the military. You know, you
Yeah.
don't see that in police departments. So anyway, around that point, I don't know, 1 p.m., something like that. Watertown got a call. This woman says, I'm being held hostage in my house. So we all gear up and we head to the house, right? Now, pretty quick, we figured out this woman is just nuts and there's no one in the house. And that had been going on all night. Hey, you know, I hear something in my backyard. I just heard a noise, right? I just heard my trash barrel moved, you know, anything. Everyone was so nervous. They were calling for every reason. So we were running around. All the teams were just running around crazy.
Right.
Now it gets to be 6 p.m. Friday evening, and the entire grid has been searched. So come to find out, one street outside of the grid, one street is where the boat is. So that boat is not within the search grid. No one was there. No one searched that house, that street. Okay. So it's not like anyone missed it. Watertown does another reverse 911, telling everyone that the shelter in place order has been lifted. You can go out now. And that's when the guy goes out and checks his boat. So he's got a boat on a trailer in his driveway.
Right.
And it's wrapped for the winter. In that, you know, that white shrink wrap.
Yeah. Yeah. It keeps the weather out. Yeah.
Yeah. So he notices that it's ripped. And so he climbs up there and he looks in and he sees blood. And I think he saw like a leg or something, right? So, right, he's on the phone 911 right away. And the problem happened when Watertown Dispatch put that out over the air, because everyone's we're at the staging area, right? So I don't know if there's 1,000 cops at the staging area now. And when they hear that, it's called self-deployment, which is not recommended. And so what I say is every person with a badge, a gun, and a vehicle headed for the boat. And so what's going to happen? They're going to completely clog the street. So by the time my team gets in our armored vehicle, right, we had a Bearcat, we can't get within a half mile of the boat.
Jeez.
We got to unass our Bearcat, leave it there, and run in on foot. And as I'm running in, I can hear gunfire, hundreds of rounds going off. And by the time we get to the scene, I can hear someone on a PA system saying, ceasefire, ceasefire. And I didn't know at the time, but it was a Boston police commissioner. And somehow he got there fast. And he's using the PA on his cruiser. And then he sees us show up. And so what had happened was, you know, every uniform that got to the boat surrounded it. And at some point, one of the cops yelled gun and fired a round. And that starts sympathetic fire.
Yeah.
So now there's hundreds of rounds being fired at this boat in a 360. It's a 360 firing squad. So you know what happens, right?
Yeah.
The rounds are going. This is a fiberglass boat. Rounds are going through the boat to the other side. What's on the other side? More cops.
Yeah. Yeah.
Luckily, only one cop got shot, and it wasn't fatal. But I believe the FBI estimated over 400 rounds fired at the boat.
Wow.
So the younger brother was in the boat. He was already injured. And I believe he got injured again, caught some rounds during that whole melee.
Hmm.
So anyway, the police commissioner, when he sees my team run up, he starts saying, uniforms out, tactical in. That's something else I'll never forget, because I never heard that. I never heard anyone say uniforms out, tactical in. And
Yeah.
he said it a few times. And so all those guys got out of there, and my team took up the inner perimeter. So we were basically like 25, 30 feet away from that boat.
Hmm.
And then an outer perimeter was set up. And then the FBI negotiator took up a position on the second floor, looking down at the boat,
Okay.
and had his own PA system. So he was trying to negotiate this brother out of the boat for about 3 hours.
3 hours.
Yeah, so up until about 9 p.m.
And he was in there bleeding that whole time?
He was in there bleeding. They were encouraging him to get out of the boat with flashbangs, projectile flashbangs, and projectile pepper spray, pepper gas.
Oh, yeah.
So think about, so this is an enclosed boat still with the cover, right?
Hmm.
So think about being basically in like a minivan filled with pepper gas.
Right.
I don't know how he even survived that. Plus the flashbangs were not fun, I'm sure. So I mean, Cameron, I just went on for quite a while with a lot of info.
I love it.
Is there any questions or anything before I just continue here?
No, you just keep flowing. I want to know how the guy got out the boat. How'd you get him out the boat?
Okay, so at around 9 o'clock, the standing order from the FBI was no one approach the boat, because they got this kid to halfway out of the boat. He had one leg and one arm out of the boat. He was straddling, right?
Right.
And the other leg, the other hand was inside the boat. That's all we could see. We couldn't see his other hand. So
Right. So he could
everyone's
have a gun.
thinking,
Yeah.
he's got a gun or he's got a bomb, and he wants to suck us in, because he wouldn't move from that position.
Right.
And he could have just stepped down onto the trailer and got out, but he wouldn't move. And he was like, you've probably seen the pictures of him. He didn't look good. But he was like lethargic, and he could barely talk. He could say some words. He was asking for water, which I'm sure he was the thirstiest anyone had ever been. So I'm watching, and I see this team of, I think, 4 operators making their way toward the boat. Now, if you watch the movie Patriots Day, it looked like it was all planned. Well, I'll tell you how it went down. They're inching their way towards this boat, right?
Yeah.
And the FBI negotiator sees him, and he goes, that team moving toward the boat, stand down. This is the FBI. We're in control of the scene. Back away from the boat. Now I'm wondering, who the hell is this team, and why are they doing this, right?
Right.
So come to find out, they're with the Transit Police Department. So again, Boston's a unique place. They have a separate department called it the Transit Authority, and they handle subways, trains, buses, any public transportation. They have primary jurisdiction, right?
Okay.
Now I have to back you up to the Watertown shootout, that occurred Thursday evening.
Okay.
That shootout went on for so long that other departments heard it on the radio and came into Watertown and got involved in the shootout.
That's a
So there
long
was
shootout. Yeah.
there was there was a transit officer named Dick Donahue. He got to the scene and he got involved in the shootout. He took a round in his femoral artery.
Mm,
So anyone who knows about your femoral artery, once that's cut, you're dead because
yeah.
it's the largest artery in your body. It's the size of your thumb, and you're going to pump out all your blood in a minute or two.
Mm-hmm.
So they were able to put Donahue in an ambulance and get him to the hospital fast enough so that ultimately they were able to save him. But he
Wow.
actually died. He died several times on the table. They just kept pumping blood into him as fast as it was pumping out.
Wow.
So there was a report that a police officer, aside from Sean Collier, who was killed before this whole Watertown incident went down. Sean Collier was MIT campus cop who got
Okay.
executed by the brothers on MIT campus. All right. But anyway, there was a report after Donahue got shot that a Watertown officer had been killed. And so now back to the boat with the team moving up on it. That is the transit police tactical team who's now moving up on the boat because they're thinking this guy killed one of ours.
Mhm.
I don't know if they thought he was dead, but he was anyway. He's near death. Okay, so they're like, that guy is ours. We own that asshole in the boat.
Mhm.
So when the FBI negotiators telling them to stand down, they kind of hesitated, and I didn't hear, but I guarantee one of them said, "Fuck him, keep going."
Mhm.
So they got up to the boat, and one of them jumped up and grabbed a wrist and pulled him out. He just slammed him on the driveway. Then they just pigpiled him, cuffed him, and put him on a stretcher, and he was in an ambulance headed out of there. So that's how that ended.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kind of like, yeah, I can imagine that was hectic at the end there. FBI was like, "Don't do it, don't do it." I mean, he could have had a bomb. Yeah,
Yeah.
could have turned into something else. But it's that was quite an event, and it was covered all over the world. And the fact that you were right there, boots on the ground, watching the whole thing going down, and able to speak to the confusion and how that actually like goes down. Because in Ferguson, the night that or the day that someone got shot, all the police from all neighboring communities were sent for mutual aid, right? Including
Right.
me.
Right.
And n- it's a funny thing when you have no information. You got
Right.
nothing. You're just sent. So you know that an officer's been killed, or sorry, that there's been a police involved shooting, and that there's basically gunfire going all over the community. When I arrived, there was like basically we were holding an intersection as like our hub and just trying to hold some sort of perimeter because we were being overrun with just like hundreds of people coming at us. They were literally breaking into businesses 1 block away from us. We could see it happening, but we couldn't send like a team through that crowd because they might get, enveloped into it. So it is crazy when stuff like that goes down. Police do not have all the information, so they're doing their best, and that's amazing. And unfortunately, although I mean, this gets me revved up and it makes me want to be a police officer again. Unfortunately, we're not getting a lot of young or anybody who's wanting to get into law enforcement these days. I wonder if you could speak to that at all and maybe kind of like, why do you think that's happening nowadays? Is it because of the way law enforcement's portrayed compared to the way it really is? Or what are your thoughts on that?
When I took the exam back in the dark ages, there were tens of thousands of people taking the exam. And I blame it on the defund the police movement.
Mm,
That's when law enforcement just fell off a cliff.
mm,
It wasn't so much that the police were actually defunded. The harm came from hurting our reputation, vilifying all of us, and suddenly the career, right, wasn't the heroes that they used to be. They
right.
were the villains, right?
Mhm.
We were the bad guys now, and it's got to the point where departments have openings. Let's say a department has 10 openings, right? 10, they need 10 cops. So they're looking for candidates. They're getting 5 or 6 candidates,
Mhm.
right? And then once you start doing backgrounds on these candidates, right, you're discounting them, right? This
Mhm.
guy's got a felony record, whatever, right? So now what are you left with? 2 or 3 candidates?
Right.
Um, and because every department's working shorthanded, um, cops are getting forced on shifts. You think you're going home at midnight? No, you're going home at 8 a.m. You're working
Right.
a double. Whether you like it or not, you're working a double, right?
Yeah.
So what does that cause when you're making guys work 70, 80 hours a week?
Yeah.
You got burnout,
Burnout. Yeah.
you got injuries, right?
Maybe even resentment. They're getting unhappy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Morale goes down.
Mhm.
Guys are retiring early. Um, and so every department in the country is hurting for personnel, for good people.
Mhm.
And if there's one thing that I hope comes out of this podcast is that someone says, all right, I want to go into law enforcement. Um, Cameron or Jim pushed me. I was thinking about it. They pushed me over the edge. I'm going to do it. I'm going to apply. That's what I'm hoping happens.
Yeah. Earlier we talked a little bit about kind of like initially getting into law enforcement, and when we were kind of initially contacting one another, one of the things that stood out to me is when you made a decision to be a police officer, it wasn't what everybody was doing in your crowd. You were hanging out with some people, but you decided to go into law enforcement while you said some of those other people went the exact opposite direction and ended up maybe in jail or getting close to it. What drove you to want to take that route instead of maybe the quote unquote easy or traditional or join the crowd kind of thing?
My journey into the career was not the typical. Um, I grew up on the busiest street in Waltham, and my parents owned their own business, so they were never home. And I was just running the streets at an early age with my buddies, getting into trouble. And then as we got to be teenagers, right, the trouble gets bigger, and my buddies were getting arrested. And actually, one of my best friends, who lived right across the street from me, got shot by a Waltham cop
Really?
when he was just a teenager. Didn't kill him. And then, funny turn of events, my very first partner was the cop that shot my buddy. Yeah.
That's funny.
I find it hard to believe that was a coincidence,
Right.
you know? But anyway, yeah, so I graduate high school barely, and I got a part-time job delivering TVs,
Hmm.
and I have no plan. I have no goals. I have no supervision. I have no guidance. I'm going nowhere. I'm a loser. And I got another friend who was going to a community college, and he goes, dude, just sign up. Just come with me, sign up. What else you got to do, right? So I signed up, started going to class. And then after that first semester, I had to pick a major, and they didn't offer much. And so I could have chosen liberal arts, right? But
Hmm.
I felt like liberal arts was like a cop out. Like you can't decide, what you
Right.
want to do. So you just take liberal arts. So the only thing that looked interesting at all, they offered law enforcement as a major. And I'm like, put me in that, throw me in that. Right.
Hmm.
And then I started taking classes and I'm like, this is kind of interesting. And that's how it happened. I said, well, what the hell? Let me take the exam. I scored a 99. And
Oh,
next thing I know, I'm in the police academy. I'm barely 23 years old. I'm just an immature idiot, and I'm in the police academy. That was
that's
my
awesome.
journey into a career that I ended up loving and going pretty far. I got. Um, I'm proud of my career.
Yeah.
Um,
Good.
so yeah, that was me.
That's awesome. It's tough when you first start getting into law enforcement because I kind of have the same thing. It's like when you tell your buddies who aren't interested in law enforcement that you're going into law enforcement, sometimes it can not like burn a bridge, but you catch some slack for it. It's like, oh, you're really going to be a cop? Oh, big cop, like that sort of
Yeah,
thing. And so you have
yeah,
to sort of decide and cross that line, which can be hard sometimes. Like one of the things I heard when I went into law enforcement in the academy was you you need to know that the friends you have now won't be your friends when you go into law enforcement. And everyone's like, bull, no, that's not true. That's not true. But it ends up being true because no one else is living that schedule. No one's living that life. You can't relate to anybody else. It's a totally
exactly.
different existence. So yeah, that is tough.
Yeah,
And
I mean, that's why cops' friends are all cops.
mhm,
You know,
yeah,
it's not really by choice. That's just how it is. That's our life.
yeah.
But so my criminal friends, when they were glad I was a cop, when they were
When you got him
stuck
out
in
of
my cell block.
DWIs.
No, 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 no. When they were stuck in my cell block for the weekend,
Yeah,
right? And I'm going in there with the newspaper and candy bars.
yeah,
That's when they're glad to see me.
yeah. That's funny. It always works out that way. You cross the line, and then a couple years in, you get a phone call in the middle of the night saying, I got this guy here. He says he knows you. And you're like, who is it? That's
Yeah,
really funny.
yeah.
Yeah. And they start
I
calling on the people they were saying, talking trash about being a police officer. That you're the first call when they get in trouble. So that's funny.
Yeah, I've told people don't ever drop my name again.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah,
Don't make me look bad. Don't put me in this situation. You know what I mean? Like I definitely yeah, I understand that. And the more you also learn that if you do favors, other people will ask for those same favors. So you got to be very and you got to go by the
no,
book, no preference or preferential treatment or anything like that, but bringing a candy bar is a whole nother thing. It's almost like a jab, like a friendly jab. Like it's a candy bar. That's so funny.
dude, it was the
I
best
never
candy
had
bar they ever ate.
I never had that experience where I was actually like, someone was being held, but I've definitely seen people I know being booked. Like as you walk through, you're like, hey, and then you just keep walking, not wanting to get involved in it. That's really funny.
Yeah.
Um,
So um, we had a brief discussion prior to
yeah,
recording, and you prompted my memory because you told me that you go to police academies now, and
yes,
you speak to the recruits,
yeah,
and that prompted my old brain. So cops have to go to in-service training
hmm,
for a week every year. I don't know if did your department do that.
yeah, yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
all right. So 1 year I was at in-service training. This was, I don't know, 20 years into my career or something. And the class was on, I think, either stress or addiction in law enforcement, which is a lot, which is basically what you do when you go in there. So it was a cop who was from a nearby department, and he was telling his story about his alcohol abuse and his stress and how his life was falling apart and all that, and how he recovered. But he told a story. I think he said it was maybe the lowest point in his life at that time, where his either his wife or his estranged wife lived in Waltham, right, my city,
Okay.
and he was at the house having a domestic with his wife, right, and so she called the police. So he said the police showed up, and she said, "Oh, he's a cop, um, and you're not going to do anything to him," and blah blah blah. And so he said, "Hey, this was nothing. There was no violence or anything. You mind if I leave?" And so he said that this rookie cop said to him, "No, no, you can't leave. Why don't you just have a seat on the couch?" So he said that he was sitting there thinking that his life sucked and it was basically over, and he had his gun on him, and he was thinking, "I'm gonna pull my gun. I'm gonna shoot these cops. I'm gonna shoot her. I'm gonna shoot myself." And I'm sitting there in class listening to this story, and it dawns on me, I'm the rookie cop he's talking about. I remember that call, and it was
Mm.
just like a holy shit moment. So I had to tell you that story.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. The job definitely cuts little bits off of you sometimes. And, life is tough in general. I mean, life is tough for everybody. We watch it every day, from if you've got money, no money, rich, poor, different creeds, different races. Like, we run into all these situations all the time, but having to be the person who gets in the middle of it and having to be the person that like sorts out the situation, it brings you into it. So you're involved in these scenarios, and it can work on you. We talk a lot about here kind of doing some proactive care instead of reactive care, waiting for something to happen. Then all of a sudden you're like, I better do something. It's more like, what could we do before this? You know what I mean?
Mm,
And that's what they try to
yeah,
do, these courses, and get you into it and all that kind of stuff. But, unfortunately, when I hit the ground, I didn't have like a plan in place for this, or I didn't have kind of like, I didn't have any higher power connection. I was basically just running and gunning, thinking every day I could handle whatever came my way. And then when I got overwhelmed, I'd try to hide it, and it just kind of multiplied and turned into something on me. So anyone listening out there, take care of yourself. If you're out there on the streets, make sure you're handling your business and taking care of yourself, because you got to be the person who's going to step in and take over a situation, and you got to be ready for that.
yeah,
Um, now,
yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, at the time, way back in the dark ages, like I said, cops didn't talk about this stuff.
right.
You just deal with it, dude. I had a wall. I don't know how. Maybe because I was so young when I got on the job, I was able to put up a wall, an emotional wall, and it
Mhm.
just seemed like nothing ever bothered me. I don't
That's
know. I don't
amazing.
know why. It seemed like nothing ever bothered me.
Just
And
accept
I,
that gift.
yeah,
Accept it.
yeah, and you know what? I think helped was the teamwork and the friendship that we had back then.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
like you would go out after shift, right? You'd go out for some beers after shift, like all the guys, right?
Yep.
And 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 looking back, that was therapy,
Mhm.
right?
Absolutely, 100%.
But the guys, they don't do that anymore.
Right.
They don't do
Yeah.
it. They all go home after shift. There's no sense of family, it
Mhm.
seems. We were a big family. We took care of each other. Well, we didn't even realize it, but just being out there, right? Talking, joking,
Yep.
uh, everything was a big joke, right?
Hmm.
But that was definitely therapy now that I look back on it. And
100%.
and I had my wall up. It was a solid wall right up until I had my retirement date. And it was a few months. I could see it. It was right there. And then my wall started to crack, started to fall. Bricks were falling out even before I got off the job. And then once I got off the job, it just completely crumbled. And now I cry for everything.
Hmm.
Um, and it's mostly tears of joy. Like my granddaughters make me cry all the time.
Yeah, you were
Um,
saying that's so beautiful. It's like when you see
yeah,
something beautiful in front of you, it
yeah,
gets
yeah.
you. Yeah.
But talking about cops, like talking about cops getting killed, like if I talk about Sean Collier, I always get choked up. Um, and he's the MIT cop that got killed by the bombers. And as far as I know, I never met him.
Hmm.
I just know that he was a 26-year-old kid who just dreamed of being a cop. And then they had this memorial. That was a few days after, and my team was tasked with security. It was a huge deal, right? If you can
Hmm.
believe it, Joe Biden came in and was the guest speaker at his memorial. Um, so when all my Waltham buddies were seated at the memorial, my team was all backstage, so we couldn't even really attend. Um, anyway, yeah. I think my last count was 7 of my coworkers have killed themselves. Um, and I don't, that's probably unusual in any profession, but
It's
not in
100%.
police work. Not in police work.
Yeah.
All right.
Last time I looked at the numbers, we're losing at least 8 first responders a day to suicide.
Yeah, it's a hell of a lot more than getting killed on the job.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's scary.
But
Yeah.
anyway, I meant to make this a recruiting video, and that's not working to recruit anybody.
Yeah, it's still, I mean, the call is there. You know what I mean? Like it's such a necessity. And the funny thing is like I never get it. Who do the bad guys call when they need help? They still call the police. You know what I mean? So it's like it's so backwards. And you end up actually doing real stuff within your community and actually like I don't know, it's an existence that is I don't know, it's fulfilling because you get to help a lot of people now. Do you sacrifice yourself along the way in ways? Yeah, 100%. You do.
Yeah,
But you do it for a reason it's a higher calling and you're willing to do it. And I think that's where a lot of like the older generations come from. They knew that they had to support one another, right? And that if you were going through something, you couldn't really talk about it. I've never said this on here, but my dad was in the DEA. He was working in the Middle East and he was captured in Lebanon and held captive for a week until the government did an exchange and they tortured him for a whole week. And so that included like being thrown like urine on him, and then the mosquitoes, and then sleep deprivation and beating on him. They killed someone in front of him, like a French reporter. And then like, so all this kinds of stuff. And they ended up doing an exchange. And it was something like 20 guys for him or something like that in the middle of the night, which turned into a gunfight. And so when I got shot, what, when I was a little boy, actually, let me back up. When I was a little boy, if I woke up in the middle of the night, my dad was always up, always up. And when I got older, he was saying, I'm fighting my demons. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what that is, but you're fighting your demons. And when I got shot, that's when he opened up about it. He told me more about what happened, but more how the way he had handled it when he came back. You know, he was like, I'm good. I'm fine. You know, everything's okay. And he went right back out there, but he knew that he wasn't okay, but he wanted to keep his job. You know, so you don't talk about that stuff. You know, you don't look like the weak link. He was also a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne. So he's always kind of like stiff lip type stuff. But, you know, like he told me when I got shot, he came to my house one day. He goes, you need to see a professional about this and you need to get professional help. don't do what I did. And I was like, that gave me permission to go a little bit further. You know what I mean? Permission to kind of like put myself in, like, I need to take care of myself because someone I love told me to, compared to trying to do what I thought the department needed me to do or wanted me to do or how I would fit in and still stay in the family and, not cause a commotion and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of pressures, within, because it's a job too. You want to keep your job. I wanted to keep my job 100%. Every time they asked me if I was okay, I said, I'm 100% okay. And I'm coming back. One, it's a higher calling. And if you feel yourself being nudged in that direction, I highly encourage you to research more and put yourself out there, because if you don't do it, who's going to do it? That's a
Right.
question. Like, who's coming? And we have to rise to the
I
occasion. We can't always be like, well, it's the older guys who are taking care of us or blah, blah, blah. No, like it's got to be the larger part of the department is younger guys. Would you agree?
yes.
Yeah.
Um,
So it's mainly
my
younger guys.
department, my department now is all young guys.
Yeah. So you're dealing with, like, if you look at a police department, something someone told me from the get-go is like, you don't see a lot of old patrol officers, do you? And I'm like, no, I don't. Like, why is that? And they're like, because it's a young man's game. Like, you know what I mean? The majority of the police department, and let's say go into, promotions or specializations or something like that, they're running and gunning on the streets for so long until they're like, yeah, maybe this isn't it. So it is like, it's a younger guy's game, and we need those top caliber people to put themselves out there. Athletes, college athletes, great fit, whoever wants to get in there and get it done. Like, there's openings.
Uh,
You just got to prepare yourself.
Dude, if you're a good candidate, the job is yours on a silver platter,
Yeah.
no matter
Yeah.
where you are.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's it is a job, but it's not just a job. It's a
Right.
career. It's a calling. It becomes who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't till the day I die, I'll be a cop,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'll always react if I'm needed.
Mm-hmm.
Last weekend, I'm having dinner with my wife in a restaurant, and I cross the restaurant. I see a guy having a heart attack, and I, you know, no one wanted to get involved. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
wanted to call 911.
Everyone's always watching. They're like,
Yeah,
what's going on? Or they're like videotaping what's going on. You're like, get involved, like,
but for me, it's not a choice.
right.
I I was I was right there with the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, I didn't have to do CPR on him, but I was ready. And I was the only one who was willing to step up.
Yeah.
That's who I am,
Yeah.
right? We're cops. That's what we do.
We need leaders. We need people who are willing to take action and not waiting to be told to do something. It's like we're losing that little by little, but it's still out there. We just got to find the right people and get them to sign
Yeah,
up again. Yeah,
yeah. Step up, please. Step up.
absolutely. You are needed. And it is there's definite return to it. As you can see here, this gentleman, Jim, is, completed a career in law enforcement and can't get away from it. He continues to pour into it and pour into others as they grow within the profession, which is absolutely needed as well, Jim. Thank you so much for still being involved in law enforcement and pushing people to be better and contribute. I mean, what, like you said, you'll always be a cop, and it, it's not even a choice, is it? It's not like I'm
No.
gonna, it's just the way you think. Yeah. I had a huge identity crisis after I got shot because I thought I was no longer a police officer. You know what I mean? Like, that was the thing I was so scared about, was like, I got shot and now I've got let go. I'm not a police officer. I thought that's who I was, like all this kinds of stuff. So I had to sort of counterbalance that thought of being like, no, I contributed. I did my part, so I have to see the good or be grateful for what I was able to do compared to what I thought I was going to be able to do in a continuous career like you were able to do. So, I mean, again, thank you for pouring your time into the community. That's amazing. And I hope, that individuals who hear this are going to be inspired and push forward and put their name on the paper, go through the background check, do all that kind of fun stuff. And then that first day is really, really cool. When you go get your uniform for the first time, when you get your gun for the first time, you get your belt, you qualify, you're doing all your stuff. And it's interesting. The first time, once you get out of, like, one of my favorite memories is when I first got out of field training. One of my first calls in the middle of the night, when you get to run the lights as fast as you can to a call, like, it's your first time alone. It's really fun. And I, this is a funny one. That was my first call that I'm running to, and I get there, and I'll just share this really quick because everyone likes a quick cop story. Show up, there's a domestic going on. We can't figure out where it's a lady's shown up to a house with a bloody head, but there's a language barrier. And it turns out once we get there, she's pointing across the street. We hear screaming from another house. We go into the house. There's blood everywhere. I'm third going in, so I'm going less lethal. They've got lethal right here. We hear him in the kitchen. We wrap around. There's a guy butt naked in the kitchen, sitting in front of the fridge. He's ripped everything out of the fridge, and now he's like sitting in front of it. And right when he get there, you know what he grabs? His testicles. And he rips open his testicles, or his nutsack, and he pulled that bad boy right off. And then he threw it.
Right. And when one of your non-cop friends is telling their great story about, the guy in front of him at the supermarket that had 16 items and they was only supposed to have 12.
Yeah.
And that's why you can't be friends with them anymore.
Right.
Because their story sucks.
Yeah. And we laugh about this stuff. I mean, and I hope anyone out there who's like, oh, why are you laughing about that? Like, listen, you're on a call. It's an extreme circumstance. A guy just ripped off his testicle.
Yeah.
You got to talk about it,
What's the alternative? You break down and, start crying about it? You're gonna leave that call and go to another call, right? If you go to a car crash, you're gonna go to an alarm, whatever, right? You move on. But you just keep the stories in the back of your head.
Well, Jim, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's so cool to run into someone who's been in law enforcement for a full career. You've got a great story with the Boston Marathon bombing and how you contributed to that. Everyone's going to be able to track you.
I've done quite a few podcasts lately, and I actually feel like this is part of my therapy. So,
I totally agree. The more I talk about my story, the easier it got. And I didn't realize it, but by telling my story, it was almost like on repeat. You know what I mean? Because I was like, I'm a cop. No, I'm the police officer who got shot. Like, that's who I was. And now I'm Cameron, because I told my story enough times that almost like that traumatic experience is a jagged stone. And the more you kind of round it out, it becomes smoother and it gets easier to tell. It gets easier to take. And then it starts becoming powerful because you're like, oh, this helps other people. And the more you tell it, the smoother it gets. And before you know it, you got a marble, So I'm with you. The more you talk about it, the easier it is. We also talk about, like, if you're struggling and you don't know who to talk to or what to talk, like, you can't talk about what it is that's actually bothering you. Studies have shown if you just take 8 minutes and just talk with an individual, not even about what's bothering you, but kind of like Jim and I have been doing, it helps you process what you've been through. It helps kind of you feel better about it. And it just, like he just said, it's basically therapy, because you're getting it out of yourself. And that's why therapists recommend journaling too, because it takes a little extra to take the thoughts that are in your head and then articulate them, because your brain has to go into actually putting it into vocabulary, into words, compared to just a feeling. So that's when you start writing that stuff down. And what's even more interesting is when I go to therapy, now I'll even say something like, the other day I thought this and blah, 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 whatever it was. And she doesn't even need to say anything. As soon as I say it out loud, I'm like, oh, that sounds a little bit more extreme out loud than it felt inside. So I got you. You don't need to do anything. I'll turn that down a little bit, that sort of stuff. So make sure you're taking care of yourself out there and processing those things that happen. We're not encouraged to do so as men, but I will put my hand up right now and say it helps. If you are looking for help and you feel like you're pinched and like you're being squeezed, talk to somebody, even if it's not about exactly what you're going through. Just keep moving, and before you know it, you'll be able to talk about exactly what's bothering you, and before you know it, you'll be able to put your shoulders back and talk about what's bothering you, and then before you know it, you start telling people the story so it helps them. And that's the way this whole thing works in Shit Creek Survivors. So Jim, thank you again. I appreciate you being here, and yeah, God bless.
Thank you, Cameron. It's a good time. And yeah, if anybody wants to contact me, I'm based X is the way to go. Twitter, right? X.
Okay.
And it's just my name, at Jim Vaglica. I'm on every day. I'm on too much. But yeah, I have all the other social media, but I don't even check them. So don't try and get me there.
Okay.
Just come to X.
Perfect instructions. All right. Thank you, Jim. Take care.
Thank you, Cameron.
Big thanks again to Jim for coming on and sharing his story. Make sure you like and subscribe so we can share the message with more people. And until next time, keep paddling.